Hello, everybody. Today I'm going to interview Sherwood Cooke. A lot of you might know him from Facebook or TikTok, I think. Um, this is probably the first time that we've actually spoken, so it's nice to meet you, actually, Sherwood.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
I've watched quite a few of your videos, and I guess I will just turn it over to you if you want to plug your channel name and all of that stuff. You can do
Yeah,
that if you want to.
I'm good on all that. So,
Okay.
but so you were kind of just talking about how you were, your testimony a little bit with me. You were
Mhm.
a heroin addict, so it was actually a perfect segue into kind of a little bit of my story. So, growing up, I grew up with a single dad, and my mom was a heroin addict. She still
Mm.
struggles today. She's in a better place than she's ever been, but she really blessed me in a sense, in the fact that she just let my dad have custody of me. She gave him full custody.
Mm.
But, it was tough for me growing up without a mom, obviously. But I did have a grandmother that was basically my mother figure. So when I go through a little bit of the story, I always called her me mom. So when I say me mom, I'm talking about my grandmother. And, so my dad, not a believer. Uh,
Mm.
we're working on him. He's getting really close, by the way. Really close. He might even already be there, but just needs some baby steps. But
Mhm.
so I didn't really have a solid foundation growing up. I did go to church with my me mom every every Sunday, most Sundays, and definitely every Wednesday. I grew up playing hockey, so some Sundays I would miss because it was traveling
Mhm.
all over the place. But I definitely was in church, but I wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it at all. It was really just a time to go and hang out with friends, and I didn't hear any of it. I really, and you'll kind of see later on, talk about, what kind of challenged me to go deeper in my studies and everything was the fact that I didn't know anything at all. So uh so I played hockey growing up, and I'm gonna kind of just go through the childhood part really quickly. I really was just by the time that I hit about 16, I started becoming extremely rebellious. Uh,
Mhm.
like I said, I didn't have a mom in the home, which, and my dad wasn't a believer, so we we watched bad movies and stuff. And listen, I want to make sure I preface with the fact that my dad, like me and my dad, are really close,
Mhm.
and he's an amazing father. Okay, so he's doing what he thought was best as a father who also, didn't have, he wasn't kind of raised with that. He didn't have a dad that was in his life either. So, there's kind of this generational curses that kind of happen, and they lead to us being in these
Yeah.
bad circumstances. So for for my childhood, most of it it was just a dad and a son. So I'm in the hockey locker room, adult hockey locker room. Any of you that have played hockey, like there's some bad stuff
Yeah.
being in there. And I developed a really, really bad mouth. Like I said some very, very vulgar things. I actually got suspended because I called a girl a really nasty, nasty word. Uh, in high school. I remember that. And man, you think back to those things, you're like, dang, who was that? What was I doing?
Mm.
But
I was just having that conversation with Jenny, and she was having it with one of the women that she interviewed. It feels like a different person when you look back.
yeah, and
Definitely.
it's kind of the whole thing that I kind of tell people is like, when you do things that I was doing, which was complete rebellion. I started sleeping around. Uh, that's pretty much all I cared about was being able to find the next girl to sleep with, and I was drinking all the time. Definitely, definitely was a drunkard. Uh, that was just my lifestyle, and I also got high a lot, smoked a lot of marijuana, and I did other drugs as well. So I wasn't a heroin addict. I didn't
Mhm.
do it super hardcore, but I joined a fraternity, I went to college, like I was just deep into it. So the I guess the biggest takeaway is like he puts you through these seasons where like you may be rebellious, and there's some other things that we're going to talk about too.
Hmm.
Christina mentioned with Jenny as well, but you know that he can use these really bad things in your life that happen, and he can turn them to good, to where
Yeah.
you can actually use that as a way to reach people who are in the same state, whether it be younger people, or whether it be your children when they try to, go through that. Possibly you
Mm.
don't know, but in the moment, it's like, wow, why did he let me go through that? And he turns it to good, and that's why I'm definitely like I'm not in the camp that would say you can't use your testimony in a gospel presentation,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of people who say your testimony is meaningless. You just need to give them the word, give them the gospel. Uh, there's a reason that you have your testimony. The Father's given you that so that you can use it as a platform and that you can
Yeah.
use it to reach people and to teach them like, hey, I'm with you. Like I am a sinner. I've fallen short just as you have. Like obviously we know that one of the purposes of the Torah is to show us our transgressions, is to show us where we fall short. And so we are to use the Torah to be able to show them that they need a savior.
Hmm.
We don't want to just come at them in the sense of like, hey, I'm just Mr. Do Good, I'm perfect, right? And you're this like sinner over here. Like you have to be able to relate with people. And so I've everything that I've gone through, I'm grateful that the Father pulled me out of it. But I'm also grateful that the Father has used it to where I can, be able to talk to people about it. I
Mm.
mean, during Sukkot, I organized a little teen for apologetics group,
Oh
and it was a lot
wow.
of fun. The kids were learning a lot and how they can defend their faith, and simple things like, hey, why do you keep the Sabbath? And not
Hmm.
just answer to, oh, my mom and my dad keep the Sabbath, so I keep the Sabbath. Like you got to be able to defend it. I told him, like, do
Yeah.
you really believe this, right? And that's kind of what we're getting to in a little bit with me. Like, did I really believe these things? And so, I told these kids like, hey, here's what I used to be like when I was your age. And it really hit them. Like
Hmm.
it relate with them. So sorry, I tend to go down rabbit trails, so I apologize. I'm not
No,
as
that's
nice in
that's
my story
totally fine.
as Christina probably was. But
Um, I don't mean to cut you off. Can you
yeah.
turn your phone to the side so that it's in landscape? I forgot to ask you before
Oh
we
yeah.
started.
Yeah, let me do that real quick. Let's see here.
So when we go to make clips out of this, if it's in vertical like that, we'll end up with like this much of you in the frame. So
Let me go.
I always forget to ask people to do that. So thank you. And I kind of just derailed the whole thing probably, but
Oh, you're good.
that's totally fine.
Yeah,
Um,
that's better.
so do people I don't think I've ever heard somebody actually say that your testimony is meaningless. Is that's really something that you've heard from people?
Yeah, so being in the Reformed camp, and I'm jumping around a lot, but we ended up at a Reformed church, and that's
Hmm.
a big thing is that they don't care as much about your testimony. They just believe that you're supposed to just go to the scripture, give them the gospel,
Wow.
and maybe they don't say it's meaningless, but they say it's not. They make it like it's not very important,
Hmm.
right? So, but so kind of back to the rebellious side of me. I was living in sin, and I end up dating a girl, and we have my what is my firstborn son out of wedlock, so never got married to her, and he's a blessing. And me and him since like the moment that he was born. Like I remember sitting in the hospital with him, going skin to skin with him, and we've had like this bond that it's hard to explain, right? We've always
Hmm.
had a very close bond, and uh, it's if I hadn't had him, I don't really know which direction I would have gone because shortly after he was born, my me mom actually passed away pretty unexpectedly. She ended
Oh
up getting
wow.
lung disease, and that really hit me hard. So I've got like
Hmm.
this. this really amazing moment, and then I've got this heartbreaking moment here.
Mhm.
And in between all of that, I've also am dealing with a custody battle because me and his mom just weren't seeing eye to eye on stuff. And that was a tough time where I didn't get to see him for a couple months at one point. Of
Mhm.
course, that leads to, some drinking, obviously, and you're just trying to get your mind off of
Yeah.
not being able to see your child. And so, we're battling that out. And when she passes away, she gave me a Bible, and I had the Bible still, and I'm like, in the moment, I'm like, well, I'm gonna read some of this because I want to honor my me mom. I want to be able
Mhm.
to know she would want me to have read this. I've never really read any of it, and so I'm gonna do this for her. Of course, like thinking back on it, like I should want to honor the father, but it was
Yeah.
a thing. It plateaued me into wanting to get into scripture. So I started reading it, and I started to really make some changes in my life. So first thing that I saw a massive change in was the music that I listened to. So I pretty much could listen to any genre of music. It really didn't matter. Rap was a big one. I did listen to some country, but I definitely listened to a lot of rap. I listened to Eminem. I listened to Lil Wayne, like very raunchy, bad, horrible music. Right. And so that's why I did a series on TikTok about, famous people who worship Satan, and we're showing people like the dangers of this
Mhm.
type of music, and some of it even creeps into the mainstream Christian music too, but that's a whole other side subject. Uh but I changed the music, and there started to be this a little just small baby steps, and that's why I really the number one thing I want people to understand from just listening to some of this is like these things take time. Not
Yeah.
everybody has a miraculous transformation overnight. The Bible does not speak of these miraculous transformations overnight in the sense of like you've got it all figured out, right?
Mhm.
The process of sanctification that takes place. And so that's what looking back on it, I'm like, he's sanctifying me here, even though I'm still worldly, there's still sanctification taking place. And so I changed the music, and the num really my goals in life started to change. At that point, I just wanted a wife. I wanted a
Mhm.
wife. I wanted to have a family. And that wasn't really my objective before a year earlier than that. So, uh, and that was the perfect timing. The perfect timing of if if I had met my wife, and Christina mentioned in the video, her testimony, which I'm sure you'll link in here that people can watch,
Mhm.
that she we found each other online, and that she had mentioned that she put on her profile she didn't want anybody with kids, and I'm a risk taker. Like I was like, it's almost like it was a challenge for me, so let me try to go for it. She's
Yeah.
is talking about that a little bit, but it was it was this amazing thing though, because if I had met her even 1 year earlier, maybe even 6 months earlier, we would have been not even close to ready for each other.
Yeah.
It was the perfect timing because I was way too immature for that woman at that point. Like I was not ready for that. We talk about like if we had met each other in high school and stuff, no way. Like none of that would have been absolute. She would have been like, dude, get away from me. So because she was, I always tell people, she's a little bit of a goody good, and I was the complete opposite. But so it I can't explain to you how amazing it is that the Father blessed me with this woman because I'm trying to grow, but I needed somebody that would guide me along,
Mhm.
right? It's interesting how the dynamic in our marriage has changed over time, where at first she was basically walking me along, like, hey, let's go to church and let's do that. And so, we started going to church. It was big evangelical church called Celebration Church. And, actually, the pastor there, Pastor Stovall, started to actually keep the appointed times and the Sabbath and everything pretty recently, which is
Oh
pretty.
wow.
But we're going to church, and we are. at least going through the motions of Christianity, right?
Hmm.
And so as that all happens, I do want to mention that I was at that point still, I had a porn addiction. And I know she talked about this a little bit, but I was subjected to pornography when I was 12 or 13 years old.
Hmm.
And it was actually through a magazine at first, not through the internet. And then it grew and grew and grew. And as James once says, the sin continued to grow, and the sin would have led to death had
Yeah.
I not conquered it and only conquered it through the blood of Yeshua. But so we're struggling with this in the background. At least I am. She doesn't know about it at this point, and we end up leaving celebration because she comes and we get married, and she moves in, and then we start going to a church that's closer to us at that point, and we started serving in the kids ministry. We both loved working with the kids, and I'm still, this is like, and people need to understand, like, this is a major problem in the church today, and it's a major problem worldwide, but it's a big problem in the church. I'm serving in kids ministry while I'm addicted to pornography.
Yeah.
And and we have two kids together at this point, by the way, Micah and Adeline. And I'm I'm still struggling with this. And the kids ministry was a really good thing for me because the kids ask a lot of good questions.
Yeah. Yeah, they
So,
do.
having those kids there to challenge me on stuff and me not having the answers is part of the reason why I started going deeper. And the other part is that we were actually pulling up to the church one day. Oh man, this is funny. And this is a big evangelical church. So they have golf carts that come and they pick you up. Like they
Oh,
want
wow.
you got that perfect experience, right?
Yeah.
So it's raining, we got the kids and they come in with the golf cart, they pick us up. And I remember driving up to the front and they said, "Today's Bible trivia." And I'm like, "Okay, all right, cool." And so they ask, "Who wore the coat of many colors?" And I'm like, "I don't know the answer." And my wife's like, "You don't know this? Like, it's Jacob?" And I'm like, or it's Joseph. And I'm like, what is why am I, why do I not know this very simple question? Like, it made me feel really stupid, even
Mm-hmm.
though I just got it wrong just a second ago. But it made me feel really stupid to the point where I'm like, how do I like to be challenged. To I like to win. It sounds really bad, but I don't like to not know what I'm talking about with stuff.
Hmm.
And of course there's growing, there's growing when it comes to all that as well, but it challenged me where I was like, all right, I've really got to get deeper into this stuff at this point. And so I started to read it a little bit more. Like we're going to church, but I might be picking up the Bible every couple weeks, maybe even every 3 weeks. But I was doing some lessons with the kids, so I was learning a little bit with that, I guess.
Hmm.
But at that point, I felt this challenge, and then all of a sudden, about a year later, I think it was. I'm not good with the dates and everything like she is, but about a year later is when COVID hit, and that's when everything really changed very quickly.
Hmm.
We couldn't go there anymore because they actually shut the church down. And so we wanted to find a church at that point that was still having church. And
Hmm.
we found one near us. I actually knew the pastor there because we had done, through our business, we had done like a little bit of a charity event where we help, people who need help with their cars and stuff like that. So I had a relationship with him at that point, and it was a Reformed church, which is, for some who may be wondering, is Calvinism. And the thing that we really liked about it when we went there, not only the people were super nice, but also the fact that they were preaching expositorily. So they were going
Hmm.
verse by verse through the scriptures at that point through the book of Genesis. And we liked that because we wanted to go deeper in our walk. We wanted to go line by line, precept upon precept, verse by verse through the Bible. And so, at that point, we were like, this is the place to be. Like, we're growing, we're learning. And the father was, we were there about a year. And during that year, I was reading the Bible from the front to the back at that point, throughout that year. And I started to ask a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions for myself, and I'm pretty outspoken. So I had a lot of questions for other people as well. And the first question that I had was the fourth commandment. I didn't even know about it at that point.
Mm.
I mean, I didn't even know about the coat of many colors. So I definitely didn't know about the Sabbath. And so I asked, like, why aren't we doing this? Like, there's 10 commandments. Why do we only do nine of them? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I consider myself at this point like a new believer, right?
Mm. Yeah.
But I'm asking that question, and the answers that I got were primarily in that church that Jesus is our Sabbath now.
Mm.
And maybe a couple people that might have said, well, the Sabbath is for the Jews and Sunday is the Lord's Day, and that's the day that we have now. It was kind of a mixed bag. So I kind of went back and I wanted to look at both of those perspectives and challenge them against the scriptures, and they fell short. So I continued to push and I continued to ask more questions. And I remember that the pastor, who by the way works for me still to this day. Okay, so we're
Oh, wow.
still we're still close, and I have a lot of respect for him and his wife. A lot of respect.
Mm.
He's a very godly man, and I'm praying that he'll see it. I gave him a paper I wrote about the circumcision of the heart recently, and he was like, I agree with everything you wrote, just the application of it. And I was like, oh, getting closer. But so I remember him being up there though, and he asked that, hey, I want you to challenge me. I want you to ask questions. And a lot of pastors do that. They encourage the congregation to ask them questions. But I started to ask a lot of questions, and I started to feel a little bit of not animosity. I don't even know the word I'm looking for. It got a little awkward. We'll just say that.
Hmm.
The point where I remember I was in a room, in the back room with with the pastor and four other brothers from that church that were elders and worship leaders and all that. And it was like a 1v5, and it was awkward. And I'm trying to defend, but at the same time, I'm still trying to figure out a lot of it as well. And so, and still am to this day, by the way. Okay. So I was saying
Yep.
I got it all figured out now, but it was, it got to the point where we started keeping the Sabbath, and we were still going to Sunday church. And that's tough. I
Yeah.
mean, that's tough. It became a little bit of a burden for us. And so, we had to choose, like, we knew we were going to keep the Sabbath, but we also didn't want to lose our fellowship because we didn't want to just sit there and do Sabbath by ourselves every Shabbat. And, we know that at this point we knew, in Hebrews it says, do not forsake the assembly,
Hmm.
and we didn't really fully understand the fact that the Sabbath is also a holy convocation, which in the Hebrew is a mikra, which is just the reading or the public reading of the word. And we are to come together on the Sabbath, and it is basically what most people think of as Sunday church. We are supposed to be doing something similar to that on the Sabbath.
Hmm.
And a lot of people, I think, in this movement don't fully understand that yet. They think that the Sabbath is just be lazy and just sit around and do nothing.
Yeah.
And they want to preach to others about keeping the commandments. We should do the best that we can in our situation to gather together. I
Mhm.
understand people are in weird places and it's harder to find fellowship. I totally get that. But we should be seeking it and praying for it, not to just sit at home. But anyways, we had to choose, and obviously we chose to keep the Sabbath. We went to, as Christina mentioned, the pastor and his wife, and we told them why we wanted to leave. And just to rewind a little bit, it really kind of it came down to this moment where we were going through the book of Colossians verse by verse, and I sat down with Pastor Mike 2 or 3 times and went through Colossians chapter 2 with him. And he was adamant that it was teaching we don't keep the Sabbath, we don't keep the feast, the new moons, any of
Hmm.
that stuff. They're just a shadow. And I'm gonna really hold back here and not go down that whole path and go through that whole chapter right now. But because it's a trigger chapter for me.
Hmm.
And honestly for those watching, it is we need to understand what Colossians chapter 2 is saying because it is one of the most important chapters in the Bible. Because if
Yeah.
you can prove to people that Gentile converts were keeping the Sabbaths and the feasts and the new moons, and not Jews, but Gentile converts, you can absolutely make people think about what's actually happening there. So
Yeah.
I won't go down that path right now. What I will say is I basically in my head it was like it was an ultimatum. I've shown you the scripture. I've gone through it verse by verse with him multiple times. Are you going to go up there and preach against these things when I've shown you what it's saying in context? And when he did, that was when he told me he was gonna, because I didn't even want to be there actually. He told me
Hmm.
he was gonna preach what he believed was true with those verses. And at that point, I said, I don't even want to be there for that message. That was basically like the very end of it, because I probably would have gotten up and said something in front of everybody and embarrassed my wife.
Yeah.
So, um, sometimes I wonder if I should have done that, but I don't know. There's a time and a place for that, but
Hmm.
so that's where we ended up leaving Sunday church. But I do need to rewind a bunch. Now I understand why Christina had to rewind all the time because it is a timeline. So when we were still going to the big evangelical church and doing the kids ministry, my wife and I went to a couples seminar thing. I don't even remember the name of it, to be honest with you, but it was in South Carolina, and that is when I opened up to her about my addiction. Let's rewind again because I'm doing terrible going through the timeline.
That's totally fine.
It came a time about 2 months before that that I was struggling with the pornography. It was 2 times a day I would watch pornography typically, 2 times a day. And we're talking about at this point 16 years of that, and the damage that it had done to me to the point. I mean, it ruins your life. And I had
Absolutely.
suffering from what's called sleep paralysis. So a lot of people may be familiar with sleep paralysis, but if you're not, basically what happens is you will wake up, your eyes are still closed, but you're awake and you cannot move. You feel like you can't breathe. Even talking about it, every time I talk about it, I started to get this bubble in my chest. Like you
Mm.
start to feel what it was like. And I would feel things at my feet and on my chest, and I couldn't move. And all I wanted to do when I was, I struggled with it even before I met Christina, but when I was laying there next to her, I just wanted to just reach out, like grab me and move me and do something. And you're trying to scream, but you cannot speak.
Hmm.
And I suffered with that to the point where I mean, I told Christina, like, this is horrible. And we tried like essential oils. I didn't understand. I couldn't discern the spiritual side of it at that point. And I ended up on the bathroom floor one night and I called out to the Most High and I told him, like, I need you to free me of this. I had little moments where I was like repentant, uh, but not really repentant. Like I
Hmm.
didn't like what I was doing. You regret it after the fact. Most men, when they look at those things, when they're done, it's instant regret
Yeah.
and shame. But for me, this time was different. It was more than shame and regret. It was desperation.
Hmm.
I needed to be saved from this. And when I called out to him, it was an immediate thing. Immediately, I not only never have looked at pornography again since that night, it's not even an addiction. It's not anything. It's not anything I even think about doing. It's not anything that I any type of uh what's the word I'm looking for? Temptation. I
Hmm.
have no temptation to even look at it. It repulses me. I hate it. I want nothing to do with it. All I want to literally do at this point, since that night, is expose it.
Yeah.
That's it. And
That's amazing. And only the Most High can give that kind of freedom from
exactly.
addiction.
Exactly. And so I'm over here, I'm taking these baby steps, right? I wanna know more about him, but then this happens, and I know, as someone who struggled with it for 16 years since I was 12 years old, I know there's absolutely no way that I could have ever stopped on my
Hmm.
own. I know it. And so when we know that the blood of Yeshua will, Romans 6 talks about how we are slaves to sin, and that through Yeshua we can become slaves of righteousness. And so he broke the chains of that addiction. And then get this. So it's crazy. I've never had sleep paralysis since that night.
Wow.
Never. And so I know for a fact that those things that I felt at my feet, that I felt on my chest, although I didn't understand it in the moment, I know now looking back on it that those were unclean spirits
Yeah.
that were oppressing me, and that they had power over me because I let them have power over me with my lust, with my
Yeah.
uh the pornography addiction, with the worldliness that I had. And so when people ask me, you know, why do you believe this? Why are you doing that? Listen, I literally know for a fact that he freed me from that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell people that because when you experience that, at that point, I told him when I stopped having the sleep paralysis and everything, and I felt that the pornography was repulsive to me, I said, do with me what you want. I'm here for whatever you want me to do. I don't care. Tell me to go there. Tell me to do that. What do you want me to do? And of course, I started opening up the Bible way more at that point. And this is where things started to really transform. And so I waited 2 months to tell my wife because I wanted to know that I had a firm handle over it. I
Hmm.
wanted to know that I had truly conquered it. Looking back, you can say, oh, it happened overnight, and it did. But
Hmm.
in the moment, you're still making sure, right? That
Hmm.
nothing. And so I told her, I said I had broken that addiction. And for those who watched her testimony, with her past and everything there, obviously it was she hated to hear it, but I will tell you the grace that that woman showed me that night
Hmm.
was incredible. And it's when I knew, like, that I don't even know how to explain it. Like, it's incredible what she did and how she handled it. I mean, we literally were just playing a board game later that night. It was like she instantly forgave me. She wanted to do whatever I needed help with in regards to it. And I knew before that, but that there's little moments in your marriages where you really realize, like, I'm gonna be with this woman forever. Like, and that was one of those little moments where you're like, you started to love her a little bit more, and you're like, man, this is the woman right here. So, uh, yeah, that was a big, big turning point in everything. So, um, yeah, where do I
That's
even
an
go?
amazing story.
Yeah, I mean, so from that point on is when I started to really dig deeper, and that's when we ended up, we ended up going to the other church, and I was digging questions, all that. Also,
Hmm.
overcoming the pornography addiction happened before that, and that's when I started reading the Bible for myself. So, and the Father led me to Torah. He led me to the Sabbath, and people were like, why do you believe this stuff and everything there? And it's like, because I told him to tell me where to go after he just freed me from everything, and he took me here.
Yeah.
He took me he took me out of where I was going, and he moved me into his instructions he said, these are good instructions, and you are to follow my instructions. I always tell Christians, it's like, you know, they're like, oh, we don't follow law anymore. I'm like, well, do you think that the Father gives you good instructions? I mean, when you sit here and when you call it for what it is, which are instructions, it's really hard for them to say, I don't really want to follow the Father's instructions anymore.
Yeah.
we don't follow the Father's instructions because of Jesus. It really sounds a lot worse when you use it in the way that Torah actually means instead of using law, which carries this negative connotation to it.
Hmm.
So, anyways, we we started to celebrate the appointed times. We had no clue what we were doing at all. We kept the Passover in this little, I she talked about how we sold her house. The Most High said, sell the house. I called her. I said that night. I was like, sell the house. We're selling the house, putting it on the market. And, she went with me on it. She is definitely a planner. And I'm like, let's go with the flow. No clue where we were going to go. Just sold it. And we both felt, though, this call that we were going to get land and that we wanted a homestead. I'm
Hmm.
gonna tell you I told when I told my family that we were going to start homesteading, they thought I was absolute lunatic. Like, there's no way this dude is going to homestead because it's just not something I did. It's not
Hmm.
something that you would ever have associated me with doing. So, do you need anything, girly? Okay, it's going to be a few minutes. Okay. Sorry, my daughter just walked up.
That's okay.
But we didn't have a clue what we were doing. We did Passover in this little place, and we just did the best that we could.
Hmm.
Sabbath we did not have a lot of fellowship at this point, and that was really, really affecting us a lot
Hmm.
because we really valued that. And we went to our first Sukkot, and it was like the Father gave me this uh message through my children, I guess you could say, that we were doing the right thing because we went to Sukkot and we went to a place in Live Oak called Feast of Nations. There's a bunch of other brothers and sisters. I wasn't even wearing tassels at this point, by the way. I still kind of was, I still felt weird about it at the time. And this is why I tell people, like, you gotta be patient with people in this stuff.
Yeah.
And I went to Sukkot and, it's like, okay, well, everyone else is wearing tassels now. I'm the weird one. If I'm not, oh, time to put
Yeah.
on tassels. It's like my cheap way of getting out of it and being able to still be with the crowd. But and then after that, I obviously, kept them on and then you don't even think about it anymore,
Yeah.
And I got a cool story to tell with the tassels in a minute. But the when we left Sukkot, the kids just had a blast. And obviously when you take Christmas away from them, as a parent, you're like, man, are they gonna resent me for taking away, the
Hmm.
holidays that we were massive Christmas people. I was raised like Christmas was everything. Easter
Yep.
and whatever, right? But Christmas, that was everything. And the year before we even stopped celebrating Christmas, we had a massive nativity lit up in our front yard and everything, right? Joy to the world, baby Jesus, all of it.
Hmm.
And uh, we got done with Sukkot, and my oldest came up to me and he said, "That was the best week of my life." And I'm like, okay, well, we're not going to stop doing this now because the Father is basically saying that, I mean, He'll speak through your children, no doubt about it. He will
Yeah.
speak through your children. So, that was a blessing to be able to fellowship with other like-minded believers during that week, and it pretty much sealed the deal for us that we knew we were where we were supposed to be.
Hmm.
So I guess at that point the biggest issue that we had, that I know Christina mentioned as well, was when we were in that big evangelical church. I had had a vasectomy. We said we
Hmm.
didn't have any more kids. We were stupid. And we also did not have um, any good counsel from anyone. I mean, it's amazing to think that you're plugged into a church and you mention to people that you want to have a vasectomy, and yet no one says a word. Like,
Yeah.
hey, maybe you should think about that. You should pray about that. Are you sure you want to do this? Just a question. No, I was okay, cool. Ha ha ha, sounds good. Funny, no more kids, right? And that's why if anybody mentions it to me, I'm going to tell them my story.
Right.
And at least make them pray about it and think about it. But we both at almost very similar times started to feel a little bit of conviction about it. Christina started to feel a little bit before I did. And but I really didn't want to go through the process of the reversal because I read stuff about it and it's like this really sucks. Like it's
Mm.
way worse than the original surgery. So it took a little bit for me to be on board with that, but I Christina mentioned how she fasted and how we both fasted, and I came to her the next day and told her like we were going to do this, and we hadn't even talked about it in like
Mhm.
months before that. And so I know that that was the Father answering that prayer from her and convicting me in the right moment. And so we ended up doing that, and after that happened, you're kind of okay, so she got pregnant very quickly after that, like 3 months. And it said that most people it would take 9 to 12 months or even longer.
Oh
And so,
wow.
like, on top of the world, like, we're like, this is awesome. Like, this is such a blessing. And, you know, uh, we ended up having a miscarriage with that baby.
Mm.
And uh, you start to ask some questions at that point. Like, I guess first off, you kind of
Yeah.
feel invincible before that happens. And it was definitely a very tough season.
Hmm.
And you're wondering, what is this? Like, what's happening here? And I know we live in a world that is broken, creation that groans, and
Yeah.
uh, that we are not in a perfected New Jerusalem at this point. But it was tough. And we ended up, she got pregnant again. I don't even know how much longer it was after that. Not too long. The surgery definitely worked. So, um, so we ended up figuring that out. And I'm gonna be honest with you, the first thing that I felt in the moment, I didn't feel as much joy as the first time.
Hmm.
It's really hard. It's really hard when you go through that to get excited for the next time because all you think about is, you know, what
Yeah, I
happened.
can't imagine.
It's tough, but there's one really good thing that happened from the miscarriage. Try to look at where are we growing in these moments, and
Hmm.
my wife and I grew even closer together through that.
Hmm.
And there were times when we were down on our knees together, and it helped our prayer life together,
Hmm.
and uh, we grew in that moment. You can look at these times in your marriages and you can just like we talked about earlier, you can see these seasons that are hard, but then you grow. And
Hmm.
I can look back and see these moments where we just grow, but we grow a lot through pain. We
Yeah.
grow a lot through the tough moments in life. That's where your marriages will grow or they'll fall, right?
Yeah.
And when you have a marriage that's centered around the Father, that is centered around the Most High, and He is the foundation of your marriage, you're going to get strength in those difficult times, and that's what happened with us.
Amen.
And so we ended up having Josiah, and it was a natural childbirth. And I'll tell a quick story on that. We did what's called the Bradley method. Have you ever heard of that before?
No.
Okay, so the Bradley method is a method where the father is heavily involved in the coaching aspect of the pregnancy, all the way through till the actual day when the child is born. And uh, she said, "Hey, we're gonna do this class and on childbirth." And I'm like, "Okay." I thought it was a 1 day class. We drive it to Jacksonville. We're going to this class, and she's like, "It's 2 hours." I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." We get there right beforehand. She tells me, "No, this is an 8 week class." And I'm like, "Come again? 8 weeks on childbirth?" I'm just picturing like we're just gonna do some like, whatever the husbands do to like stretch and whatever else, like, maybe
Hmm.
little. No, this was way deeper than that. And I remember the lady teaching the class, she said, "All right, first question I have for everybody." And there's all these young couples in there, by the way, and me and Christina are like way by far the oldest people in there. And this is when we started to realize we're really old. And so they're like, she's like, why Bradley? And I'm like, okay. I had no clue what Bradley was. All these
Hmm.
guys, all these husbands around the room are like, I do Bradley because it's good for, growth and all that. They go through all these things. It gets to me and I'm like, guys, I got a lot of catching up to do. I don't know what Bradley is. I have no clue. And I really, it was a pretty funny thing in the moment because they're all laughing about it, and I had a lot of catching up to do at that point. But we did that first class, and man, I learned. I was already into a lot of naturally minded things, and we've changed
Hmm.
our diet, and like this is a big thing for us. We were vegan, as she mentioned, for a little bit, and then we
Hmm.
had Passover lamb, and that changed, and uh, went basically a 180, but not carnivore, but like a good balance between the two, and
Hmm.
fresh milled grains and grass fed meat and all these different things. And uh, so I was all into that. We'd already gotten rid of all the medicine in our house that was, pharmaceuticals and stuff like that, and gone
Yeah.
natural minded on that too. But I did not realize how much of a lie it was with a lot of the way that childbirth takes
Oh
place.
yeah.
And I told the instructor, I said that she should definitely hold her class for atheists. Like, I'll pay for the atheists to go to the class because when you see how childbirth works, there is absolutely no way that you could deny intelligent design and deny that a creator, no matter, I'm just trying to say, just a creator of some kind. You believe in no God, watch how childbirth works. And it's incredible. It's incredible. And it was a it was such a blessing to be involved in that. Another one of those moments, right? I'm there with my wife. We're the day that Josiah was born, like I'm going through everything with her. We're working together through it, like all the way to the moment that he comes, I'm there involved with her. And the whole reason that the Bradley guy said, "Hey, I he was a delivering children and he kept delivering the children with the mom and had like this amazing moment with the mom. And he's like, why am I the one having this amazing moment when the father should be having the amazing moment with
Yeah.
his wife? And that's the moment that we had. It was so cool. It was so cool, man.
Oh,
Like
that's great.
just another stepping stone. And Josiah is Yashayahu, and it means that Yahuwah heals and supports. We didn't even know that when we actually named him that.
Oh wow.
We named him Josiah because it says in the scriptures, 2 Kings 23, I think, that there was no king like Josiah who loved Yahuwah with all of his heart, soul, and mind,
Yeah.
according to the Torah of Moses. And so I know, like, I want, Josiah to be like that. Like, I want him to understand that the Torah is good, and I want him to know that the Torah teaches how we love Yahuwah,
Yeah.
teaches how we love our neighbor. And that's a beautiful verse, by the way, if you want to talk to a Christian who just says, no, we just love the Lord with all of our heart, soul, and mind nowadays. That's all that we do. And it's like, well, do you know the Bible says that to love him with all your heart, soul, and mind is to actually keep his Torah?
Yeah.
What about King Josiah?
That's always the first question I ask is, well, how do you do that? How do you love God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength? And how do you love your neighbor?
Yeah, practically, how does that work? Make
Yeah.
them walk you through it. So, so yeah, Josiah came, and uh, when you don't think that you're ever going to have a child again,
Hmm.
and you have a child, like I look at that baby all the time. I'm like, man, this is amazing. Like I took my other children for granted. I really did, in the sense of like you just, oh, this is cool. But with Josiah, it's like a different mindset. It's like, you know, I thought I was done. Like I thought we really thought we were done, and it's just such a blessing
Yeah.
that Father he convicted us through His Spirit, and now we have life, and we have life that we can bring into the world that we can. This is a dark world, and so we
Yeah.
need to be bringing in light, so that we can shine that light to all the darkness, and that's what we want to do with our children. We'll take as many as He gives us at this point. So yeah, that's that's most of the story, very summarized. I will say that. since coming to Torah, my number one goal is to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
It is to show to find this balance and go to Christians and say, hey, you know, and I don't have a problem with Christian. When I say Christians, I'm just talking about people who don't believe we should keep the Torah. I
Yeah.
don't have a problem identifying as a Christian. I know a lot of people, maybe even watching this, have an issue with that. It's a follower
Mhm.
of Christ. So, um, but we need to be able to meet them where they are. We need to be able to defend our position, gently rebuke,
Mhm.
gently rebuke. Make sure people listening understand what it is to gently rebuke. It's in Galatians. And I know we might not like Galatians because people take it out of context so much, but it's
Yeah.
it's still a good book. It's still a good letter, and as long as it's read the right way. But we need to be able to show them, and we need to have patience. We had some friends that I went to about the Sabbath, and they didn't want nothing to do with it in the
Mhm.
beginning. And we talked and we talked and we talked, and I gave them all the verses, and it took actually just stepping away from them and not talking for a little bit for them to start seeking on their own. And then all of a sudden, they start seeing all the verses because they've been challenged on it. They
Yeah.
start seeing it everywhere because it is everywhere. And they do keep the Sabbath now, but it took
Wow.
a year and a half from the moment we actually stopped talking for them to see it again,
Mhm.
for them to come back to us and be like, yeah, it makes sense now. These things do not happen overnight.
No.
When we go to them and we say, you got to call them by this name, and you need to, do this law this way, and immediately you need to wear tassels, and we come at them with all that stuff without giving them just a little bit of time to figure it out.
Yeah.
We forget where we came from is what happens.
1,000%.
And I know where I came from, and
Yeah.
I know it was a process. As you've heard, it was a process.
Yeah.
So,
I
you know,
really feel called to that too, actually, is kind of like that's a perfect term for it, bridging the gap, because it seems like a lot of people in the Torah community have forgotten where they came from, and they forgot that the Father was patient with them for, in some cases, decades while they were coming to the truth. And then you see those same people turn around and they're just beating people over the head on Facebook. And that really drives me up the wall, because there's no reason to do that. And not only are they pushing people further away from the Father, but they're also going to have to stand before the Father and explain to him why they did those things. And I don't know if they don't know that or if they don't care, or but like, we're going to give an account for every vain word we've spoken, and I can't think of more vain words than some of what I've seen on social media. It's
yeah,
actually insane the way that some people treat, especially mainstream Christians. It's like they make it their whole mission to just bash mainstream Christians, and they go on people's walls and personally say things to them. And in my mind, you should dismantle somebody's idea, not them personally.
yep,
Like, if their idea is bad, then you explain to them why the idea is bad, and you don't say, "Oh, you suck and you're going to go to hell."
and stuff. Yeah, yeah, it is. That's why, like, my perspective with even the appointed times is a little different. I don't go to them and start saying, "Hey, Christmas is pagan and Easter is
Yeah.
pagan and all this." Like, first off, we can't fully prove that all of these things are rooted on the Christian level in paganism. We can't
Mhm.
prove, and I want to be able to, let me grab this dog real quick.
Okay. I can pause it real quick if you want to go put him
Uh,
on a leash or something like that.
they're good. He heard me now. You're
Okay.
knock it off. Um, All right. So what was I just saying? Oh yeah, appointed times. So I don't want to come at it from that angle. Actually I want to elevate how amazing the appointed times are
Hmm.
and not worry about this because if I have the appointed times here that are just so beautiful that I can show somebody like from the moment of creation when he said he put the sun, moon, and stars in the firmament, he did so for his Moedim.
Hmm.
He had them in mind when he created the world. We know that he rested on the seventh day. Hebrews 4 says that those who enter his rest should enter as he did. Ask somebody, when did he enter his rest? It says it 3 verses earlier. You go back to Genesis, but you could also just look 3 verses earlier in Hebrews 4. And you can see when he did that. And you can show him that Yeshua said the Sabbath was made for man.
Hmm.
And you can then show them that the appointed times were not just for the Jews. And this
Yeah.
is a big misunderstanding. So get into that, explain to them the two kingdoms. Go to Leviticus 23, where he says, these are my feasts, these are my appointed times, and show how they connect to Yeshua. I mean, I know everybody listening knows this, but walk them through that and show them that when Paul says they are shadows in Colossians 2, not were shadows as a negative
Yeah.
way, are shadows, show them how they're shadows and how they point to
Hmm.
Yeshua and then tell them that you can actually celebrate these things that you can find in the scripture. You can't find Christmas, you can't find Easter in the scripture. Easter, I
Hmm.
have a bigger issue with because it's like a direct replacement of Passover. It's like
Yeah.
obvious a
Yeah.
replacement of Passover. So show them that. You don't have to get into the pagan, just show them it's a replacement.
Hmm.
Tell them how I started celebrating Feast of Tabernacles. I don't need Christmas anymore. I can celebrate when Yeshua came and tabernacled with us during that time.
Hmm.
And start getting into all that stuff. If you want to talk about some of that stuff later, that's fine. But I
Hmm.
think coming at it from such a negative way at first is I think you're going to reach people more and showing them how good the appointed times are rather than showing them how bad the other holidays are.
Yeah.
But
I think
everybody,
that's a great way to look at it because people don't want to hear that they're doing something wrong, especially if they don't know you at all. Like if you're just approaching somebody on the street or on Facebook, they don't want to hear from you that for the last 30 years of their life they've just been wrong. So I think that's a great way to go about it. Show them from the opposite side how great the feasts are and how much of a blessing they are to you and your family, and instead of just hammering them about the things that they've been doing wrong. I think you could even apply that to everything else that the Torah has to say.
yeah. Absolutely. And it also depends on the relationship you have. Everyone's
Mhm.
different. Some people struggle more with their family. I know I do because you have this relationship and you have so much love for them that you want them to see the truth. And that
Yeah,
sometimes you actually approach it wrong because of that,
yeah.
and that's just a struggle I've definitely had for sure. So, um, but we have to be able to have the conversations. I think there needs to be more, uh, public discussions, maybe. I think that would be a good thing. We were talking about debates and everything earlier, and I'm not a huge debate fan personally.
Mhm.
I think there's a time and a place for them,
Mhm.
but most of the debates that I see nowadays are so unfruitful, and they actually just they really they're not edifying at
Yeah,
all. Like they
yeah,
bother me when I'm watching them. And there's some that are good, but I think it's just better to just have a discussion.
yeah.
Because when you're having a debate, my biggest issue is that even if you make a good point, nobody's going to actually say that you did make a good point. Like they're
Mhm.
not going to do it.
Yeah.
But when you're having a discussion, it's a little bit different. It's like, okay, we're working through this together,
Mhm.
and that's what we need to be willing to do. I've been thinking about the fact that I should probably go out and make different signs and kind of do a thing like kind of like a change my mind type thing, but not in a debate way. Like um we went one time to a park and we had a sign that just said, "Are you walking the ancient paths?" Because Yeshua, he said that his yoke is easy, his burden is light. He said, "You come follow me, and you'll find rest for your souls." And
Mhm.
don't think many Christians understand that's from Jeremiah 6 when Jeremiah is preaching to Judah and saying that they didn't walk the ancient paths because they didn't actually obey his Torah. They had
Yeah.
forsaken his Torah. So to walk the ancient path is to walk in his Torah, and that's why like I'm big on like restoring the ancient paths is a big thing for me.
Hmm.
You ask that question, there's two things that could happen. One, you could get an unbeliever that just doesn't know what the heck you're talking about. Maybe they think it's some Gnostic pagan thing for all they know.
Hmm.
Curious about why you're asking that. And then you can present the gospel to them. There's also Christians who are going to come up to you and they're going to ask about it. And then you can teach them how Yeshua taught the Torah, walked in the Torah, didn't abolish the Torah, and you can show them all these different things, a platform of discipleship.
Yeah.
And so there's two different ways to either evangelize or to disciple somebody that needs to know how they can walk like Yeshua did. And we need to be able to have those discussions. I
Yeah.
love Andrew LeClaire. He goes outside the camp. He
Yeah.
goes out and talks to people. I told him if he ever comes around here, we're going to definitely do that together because I love that. We need to be having those conversations. And there are
Yeah.
pastors out there that are going to listen. I know
Yeah.
99% of them are going to be stubborn and they're going to be stiff-necked and they're not going to want to hear about the fact that they should be teaching obedience to Yahuwah's instructions. But if there's one, there's one. Because
Yeah.
you reach one pastor, how many people are you reaching in return? And I get it. Like a lot of these pastors, it's a problem because their livelihoods depend on it. That's why I
Yeah.
believe more strongly in house church. I think house church is more biblical, but another side discussion. Um, but yeah, I think that we need to be having these discussions with people, and we need to be able to do it in the way that we're talking about here,
Yeah.
in love, gentle, but firm. Right? You know, we need to be innocent as a dove, wise as a serpent. Right?
Hmm.
And how do we do that? We go out, we stand on the word, we let the scriptures speak for themselves, and we
Yeah.
don't start yelling at people and screaming and stuff and saying that they need to repent right away. Just start talking to them about the scriptures. The scriptures are the sword of the spirit. They'll do their job if you just lean
Yeah.
on, let them talk, especially when you read them in context. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I've kind of gone and I'm starting to rant now, but
That's
if
okay.
if you can go to somebody when you're talking to people about this, they are going to jump to a million different verses.
Hmm.
You can't let them do that. When they say, "Hey, Colossians chapter 2, 16, don't let them judge me in regard to the Sabbath. Don't judge me if I don't keep the Sabbath." Okay, let's go look at that chapter. Well, Galatians says no. We'll go to Galatians. We'll go to Galatians, right? But let's read Colossians 2 together. Make them stay on the text that they bring up
Yeah.
and make them read it in context. Make them read it. Don't start reading to them. Let them read it. Let their own eyes see it and process it. We are so anxious to start showing them and start talking about the Torah that we let them jump all over the place and start
Hmm.
checking and we let them get away with it. You can't do that. You've got to read the verses in their context. That's what's going to convince people.
Yeah.
Because for me, when I saw Colossians 2 and I saw that it was being cherry picked, I questioned everything. I'm like, what the heck? Like, this is not what it's saying the complete opposite. What's happening here? You gotta be able to yeah, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's a great point because when you think about, like you just said, when you think about the time that you first realized that it wasn't saying what the pastors or whoever was telling you that it said, it was because you read it in context. It was because you read through the section of the Bible and you compared it to whatever else that you knew to be true, and you said, "Wait, that doesn't make sense." So, and I'm guilty of doing that all the time. And it is because like you get excited and you wanna just unleash the floodgates on somebody and make them know the whole truth all at once.
Yeah.
But that's never happened in the history of the world, probably. So I
Mhm.
think that's a great idea that you should. just kind of one at a time walk them through let them bring up the verses and then slowly one at a time walk them through them. I think that's a great idea.
I'm the same way. Christina would tell you, like, I used to try to condense everything I possibly could into a 30-minute conversation,
Mhm.
and this is just going to prove everything to them.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep going. I can see their heads spinning, and sometimes if you spin someone's head so much, they don't even hear any of it.
Mhm.
I've learned that we need to be okay. It's the when you're if you're preaching the gospel to somebody, you need to understand that you're planting seeds. Somebody else might come along and they might water those seeds later, and the
Mhm.
harvest could be years down the line. It's
Yeah.
no different when we're trying to disciple people. We're trying to plant seeds with them, show them a little bit of truth, let somebody else water it down the line. I've seen this happen where somebody is seeking. I'm sure tons of people that are watching this would say, I saw something at first, and somebody else came to me about it, and somebody else came to me about it, and then I'm like, okay, the Father's showing me something.
Mhm.
He will use his people to plant and to sow and to see and to water, and he will do that consistently until he has his harvest. And it
Yeah.
works with both of those things. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I did want to go back to when you said towards the beginning, I think it was, you had said that one of the biggest problems in the church is that men have pornography addictions.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to say that I agree wholeheartedly that that's a huge problem. And I think most men, I would say most men have, whether they're Christian or not, have a pornography addiction. I did for I think I watched porn for the first time when I was like 10 years old and all the way up until I was 29 maybe, 30 even.
Mm.
I think now it's been 3 years probably. So I was probably about 30 and it's just a I think it's something that 8 or 9 out of 10 men struggle with and maybe even more than that. I think they do polls and stuff and you have to rely on people being honest, but
Yeah.
it's 80 or 90% of men in the modern world. And just because somebody goes to church and says that they're a Christian doesn't mean they're immune from that. So,
Mhm.
and I feel like it's something that people don't want to talk about even because there's so much guilt and shame attached to it. And so people just kind of sweep it under the rug like it doesn't exist and they think if they ignore it maybe it'll go away or I don't know what they're thinking, but I think that that's a and it seems to be a seriously underserved ministry. Like I don't think I've ever seen like a YouTube channel or a ministry of any kind solely devoted to breaking men free from the addiction of pornography.
Yeah, and
And
there's
I
good
guess
help out there as well. And
mhm,
women struggle with this too.
yeah.
So it's not
Yeah.
isolated to men. And there's good apps out there. It's interesting. There's some friends of ours that are still trying to figure everything out currently. They kind of started keeping the Sabbath with us, and we're doing the appointed times, and they've kind of fell out of it a little bit. I think getting they're getting influenced in two different directions, and it's kind of confusing for them right now. But when we met them, uh, I spoke up about my addiction because that's usually if I meet any kind of man, I bring it up pretty
Mhm.
quickly, because either they've overcome it themselves or they're probably still struggling with it. I just assume most, like you said, are struggling with it.
Mhm.
So I bring it up in a sense of, that they know it's a safe place to talk about if they're struggling with it
Mhm.
and to convict them as well. And he was struggling with it, and he actually had a dream the same night after I brought it up
Oh wow.
that the father came to him and told him, like, you need to stop this.
Mhm.
And then he came to me and was like, right after we met, like I had that night. And so he asked me to be his accountability partner in it. And he's on an app called Covenant Eyes, where you can basically watch what they're doing, what they're searching on the internet and everything. And it's good. If you are struggling with this, you need to find somebody that can hold you accountable, uh,
Hmm.
and to understand that there still could be slip ups, and don't feel shame in that.
Yeah.
Right? If you are the one holding them accountable, don't shame them if they screw up. Right? So, um, yeah, it is a big issue in most churches. Massive churches still do not have any programs in place
Yeah.
be able to help men with that. They did a poll on that. I think it was like 80 or 90% of churches do not have any kind of
Wow.
program in place to be able to help. So churches they should have that. They should have
Yeah.
discussions. They should have men that get together, discuss their issues. Um, and that leads into the Torah side of it too. For us with, kind of my last point, I got a little list that I'm working down here, and my last point was that we're praying for more fellowship, and we're praying that we could get this a little more organized,
Hmm.
because we've gone down these paths where there's basically denominations of Torah observance now,
Yeah.
and we all hate denominations, and we say we hate church, but yet we're guilty of breaking into all those same kind of things, whether it be the calendar. For us, we actually are on a calendar that we don't even fully think is the most convincing calendar.
Hmm.
I believe the Dead Sea Scroll calendar makes the most sense to me in
Hmm.
my studies of it. Uh, but to be honest with you, I've studied all the calendars, and I feel like I could find a pretty good flaw with each one of them.
Yeah.
And I came to the conclusion after we prayed about it that the Father is far more concerned with us fellowshipping and having holy convocations as brothers and sisters, having elders, having the scriptures are clear that he likes things to be organized,
Hmm.
whether it be in the Torah or whether it be in the New Testament. He likes organization. He likes his people to do things structurally. He's not a God of chaos and unorganization.
Yeah.
And so we need to be willing to start doing those things, whether it be a house fellowship. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the building, but we need to start being able to have house fellowships with real elders, with men
Hmm.
who can all hold each other accountable, like we were talking about, and be able to have what Paul talked about, different members of the body, right? If you have an ear without eyes, if you have a arms without legs, then
Hmm.
body is not going to function like it's supposed to. And it's no different with the body of Messiah. We have to have those people. That is my prayer, is that he would give us that that kind of body, right? And
Hmm.
that we do that localized in multiple different places, and then we can have a little bit of structure. And because the people that are coming into this are just isolated. They're
Yeah.
watching YouTube videos. I can tell very quickly when I'm talking to somebody, and or whether it be online or whatever it may be, and they're just spouting off things that they've watched on YouTube videos. And
Yeah.
listen, there's good things on YouTube. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, I have our shop. Our
Hmm.
shop has a massive YouTube channel, and we teach things automotive, right? And
Hmm.
there's good things on there. I'm not saying that, but you can tell when somebody's not actually reading the Bible for themselves, they're just watching videos.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And there's when we are isolated, when we don't have fellowship, when we don't do things in the way that he designed and told us to do, then it's very easy for the enemy to come in and distort things,
Yeah.
confuse us. And I think he's doing that with a lot of people, because a lot of people are so caught up in whether it be the name or the calendar or all these different things, that they're not even studying the Torah itself. They don't
Yeah.
even understand the instructions. They don't even understand the most basic things in his word. They just know little tiny snippets of whatever their pet doctrine
Yeah.
may, you know. So,
Yeah.
anyways,
It's frustrating. It's very frustrating.
it is. There's no scripture that says that you are profaning a day if you do it on the wrong day. All right.
Hmm.
unless some of your audience believes in Jubilees of Scripture, I'm not
Hmm.
sold on Jubilees. I don't have
No, I'm not either.
the First Enoch is Scripture, so I'm not anti-Apocrypha. Most of the Apocrypha I actually believe is Scripture, but uh, I'm not sold on that. And we see in Scripture that people do extend the feast days, and we see that the Father does not condemn them for it. He actually
Mm,
seems to be happy that they're doing it. And according, if they're right that you have to do it on the right day or you're profaning it, then uh, those people would have been called out on that for doing that
mm,
and aren't at all.
absolutely.
So, I mean, yeah, Solomon comes to mind in the dedication to the temple, and they did the feast for 7 extra days. So, yeah, I don't, I'm just gonna do the best that I can. We can't actually do the Torah exactly as it calls for right this second.
Hmm.
Our current state and isolation and whatever you want to call it right this second. Um, we can't fulfill it exactly as we're supposed to,
Hmm.
and most people understand why that is. So it's okay if we're not doing it on the perfect day all the time. The Father wants us to gather together. He wants his people to be
Yeah.
a God in some sense. And I wish we could be Acts chapter 2, have everything in common. Man, that would be great. But
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen until he comes back, probably.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait for that, actually.
I don't think any of us can. No,
Yeah.
that's gonna be good. When I'll tell you when I was a kid, I used to think uh, I used to think that we're gonna die and we're either gonna go up to the clouds, and my understanding was that we're just gonna sing to God 24/7 up in the clouds. And I used to think, wow, that sounds so boring. But I'm just being honest. And but the other side of me was like, well, they're also telling me that I'm going to be tormented in fire forever. So
Hmm.
I guess I'll take the singing in the clouds. That sounds okay. I'll do that. So I used to have these thoughts in my bed at night as a kid. And when I started to read the scriptures for myself, and I realized like, no, it's way different than that.
Yeah.
We aren't even promised to go to heaven. We're actually promised, the promise is the resurrection,
Hmm.
and the promise is to be in his kingdom with him on the earth.
Yeah.
And when I started to realize like that he's going to give us jobs, and we're going to have like, my prayer is that I can do enough here on this earth that he can say, well done, good and faithful servant. And he can say, hey, I'm going to give you charge of these cities. You teach them Torah. That's what I
Mm,
want. I love that. And to be able to realize like that we're going to actually still be doing things. Like we're going to be like eating, right? Like we're going to be eating in heaven. We're going to still be keeping the Sabbath and celebrating the appointed times, but we're just going to be doing it in a way that we could never even imagine right now.
mhm.
That is so cool to think about that. It's so much different than what I was raised to think. And then also understanding I don't believe in eternal conscious torment. I hold to more of a annihilationism perspective that, I don't fear him who can destroy the body, but him who can destroy both the body and the soul in the lake of fire. So,
Mhm.
um, but anyways, I know we could go down past with that, but I did forget to mention my tassel thing. I was at work one day, and there was a client that came in, and he was not a very nice guy at
Mhm.
and he really ticked me off. I was, I used to have a really bad temper. Like, I've thought about going back to play hockey again because I used to get in so many fights in hockey that I want people that I used to play with to see the change and be able to, tell them how that change happened.
Mhm.
But I used to have a really bad temper, and uh but this guy was getting to me a little bit, and not to where I was going to say something really bad, but I was shaken, I was irritated, and he ends up walking out, and this another client comes in immediately, and this doesn't happen very often. And he said, "Hey, I just wanted to ask you, what are those things that you're wearing right there?" And I was like, "Oh, these are tassels. They're here to remind us of the commandments, and
Mhm.
Yeshua wore tassels, just kind of, what they are. And I thought afterwards, I'm like, wow, that calmed me down so much in that moment. I think that was the Father actually saying, like, hey, here's another reason you can wear these. Like,
Yeah.
it brought clarity to me in that moment where I was feeling some anger. And then I could look down and understand, like, hey, remember my instructions, remember my commandments. He was bringing me back to him. He was showing me, you don't need to have that. You don't need to have that anger in your heart right now. And so there are good things like that that the tassels do. Also, they are a great way to evangelize because if somebody asks you
Yeah.
about it, you can mention it and you can tell them about Yeshua and what they their purpose is, and depending on who you're talking to. Again, it all depends on who you're talking to. There's going to be Christians that are going to ask you, and there's going to be non-believers. You should be prepared for both of those encounters.
Hmm.
And people in the Torah crowd, and I'll end on this unless you want to talk about something else, but people in the Torah crowd really need to understand the gospel. They need to understand what Yeshua did for them. They need to
Hmm.
understand the first Adam and the second Adam, and the fact that Yeshua was was born of a virgin, that he was perfect and sinless. We know he was our Passover lamb, and that he literally died on the cross. He didn't deserve to die. He was 100% innocent, and that he rose from the dead and defeated sin and death. The tomb could not hold him, as Peter talks about in
Hmm.
Acts chapter 2, and that only through his resurrection and the fact that he's going to return and resurrect us can we have eternal life,
Yeah.
right? We There's a difference between the atonement that the Torah provides and the covering of a sin and what Yeshua did. It says he comes to take away our sins.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between a covering and a taking away. And so we need to understand that he came to destroy the works of the devil. He became a man specifically so that he could destroy the devil, the
Hmm.
one who had the power over sin and death, Hebrews 2:14. And so we need to be able to make that presentation, especially to Christians. They need to understand that we know the gospel as
Hmm.
Torah fervent Christians because they think that we're not saved, probably. They
Yeah.
think we don't even know the gospel. So lead out with that. Show them you know the gospel. Say, I don't think we're saved by the law. I think that we are to obey the law. And hey, if you're walking in, a lot of people say you're not saved by the law. We could get into semantics with that because if you're really walking in sin, then you're not going to inherit salvation,
Yeah.
period. And that
Yeah.
means you have to be obedient to a degree. But understanding that the gift that we're given, the free gift, is grace, and the Father extends that out to us. He freely forgives us, freely
Hmm.
forgives. So understand the gospel, preach the gospel, and also preach discipleship because that's what he said. Go out and make disciples, teaching them what I commanded you. That's what we should be doing. And there's two
Amen.
sides of that. Make a disciple by sharing the gospel and then teach them. The church is just interested in getting salvation. There was 88 people saved today at church.
Mm.
Well, that's not biblical because I know First Peter 1 says that we're saved when Yeshua returns. So
Yeah.
he was saved at your church today. You don't raise your hand and do an altar call and you're saved. By the way, why do they
Yeah.
call it an altar? The only altar is actually a temple. Okay, anyways. But it's like they just are about the numbers. It's literally like the Pharisees. The Pharisees would go cross the sea, Yeshua said,
Yeah.
try to make somebody else the son of Gehenna. They're just all about the numbers. How many can I get circumcised, right? It's the same
Hmm.
thing to do with baptisms and salvations. And then what do they do with those people? Here you go. Here you go, world. You're
Yeah.
good. You're saved. Just do what you want now. They're not going to say that, but they don't disciple them.
Yeah.
In the gospel, we know how to disciple them because we know what his instructions are. Teach them the instructions, walk through it with them. When people start to see that and the Torah community can start to be consistent with that, it's going to be a game changer. And we
Yeah.
know that the Father is bringing people back to his law before the return of his Messiah. We know
Yes.
he prophesied in First Enoch chapter 1. It's prophesied that we will return. It's happening. You can go on things like 119 Ministries, their little fellowship finder. If you
Hmm.
had seen that 8 years ago and look at it now, we know people are coming back to this law. And
Yeah.
That's always what happens. That's the revival that happens in the scripture is when revival happens, it's always his people coming back to his ways and his instructions. And be patient with people on it though. All right. Anyway, sorry, ranting.
No, that's totally fine. Thank you for coming on, Sherwood. That was great.
Yeah, thank you for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
No
And
problem.
we need to talk more outside of this too. So,
Yes.
because I definitely I feel like, man, I feel like our we would be really close friends if we were like living close together and stuff. We'd have you guys over at Shabbat and
Yeah.
everything. Too bad you're not closer, but
Where do
uh
you guys live? Florida?
yeah, we're in Florida, kind of close to Jacksonville.
Okay.
Yep.
I
And
live in New York, and Jenny obviously lives in Canada, so
yeah, I have
probably.
to ask a question on that. Why do you why are you going to Canada and her not coming to New York? Why do you guys want to be in Canada?
Um, her kids live in Canada, and their father lives in Canada, and they go to school in Canada. So,
That makes sense.
um, maybe at some point in the future we'll end up back in the United States, but for now,
That
that's
makes
just
I didn't know that.
yeah. And actually, because of my sinful and rebellious past, I can't go to Canada currently. So I had to spend like the last 8 months collecting up a bunch of paperwork and documents and like a whole history of my arrest and everything, and basically fill out an application asking them for permission to go to Canada. So
Yeah, all
I have
that.
to wait to hear back from them on that, and then presumably I will be able to visit Canada and then start the process of becoming a permanent resident, which who knows how long that'll all take. They purposely make it difficult for people to immigrate to another country
Yeah,
for some reason.
Me and Christina have been praying for you guys on that. I mean, I couldn't
Thank
imagine
you.
that is to have that long distance thing going on. That's tough, but
Yeah.
it will make you more grateful when that day comes that you guys can be together every single day. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a cool day. We will definitely rejoice with you on that day for sure.
Yes. Thank you.
Cool, brother. Yeah, definitely let me know if you want to have any like topical group discussions soon and
Okay.
the big YouTube channel guys on here, Sean, Kingdom in Context, Metaphysics Mike. We'll get them on there. I think Matthew Jansen would probably join. There's a few
Yeah.
people. I'd love to be in some of those conversations because I do a lot of TikTok lives with people,
Hmm.
but these people are crazy on TikTok. They are
Yeah.
crazy. Anyways, good talking to you, brother.
You too, Sherwood. Thank you.
All right, see you, man.
See ya.